He willingly dies to be resurrected in the future, but wakes up in 2084, alone, with no past and no right to die. The year is 2015. Mark Jarvis is a man who seems to have it all. He has an exciting job that pays well and genuinely interests him. He's surrounded by loyal friends who would support him through anything, and most importantly, the woman he loves is always by his side. His life appears truly blessed, and his future looks bright, until everything changes with one devastating diagnosis. A doctor tells Mark he has a severe form of cancer, and, at best, he has 1 year left to live. There's a chance to prolong his life with chemotherapy and aggressive medication, but no guarantees. Faced with the reality of his impending and irreversible death, Mark comes to terms with it and begins preparing for the end. He hands over his business to trusted colleagues, teaching them how to continue his work. He sells his home, gives away most of his belongings to friends, and shares the heartbreaking news with his mother and girlfriend, begging the woman he loves to find happiness no matter what. As the end nears, Mark finds himself lost in childhood memories, realizing he never truly appreciated the moments he had, always assuming there would be more time and more chances. But now, time is slipping away. One day, Mark drives to the outskirts of the city, abandons his car, and disappears into the distance. Naomi, his girlfriend, eventually finds him, confused and disoriented. He tells her he doesn't remember how he got there or what happened. They both assume it's the disease worsening, and that Mark's time is running out. Weeks later, Mark, Naomi, and a few close friends gather for a farewell party. During the emotional evening, someone brings up a company called Miracle Health, a controversial yet rapidly growing private corporation that uses cryostasis to preserve the body in hopes of reviving people once future medicine can cure their diseases and offer them a second chance at life. Intrigued, Mark seriously considers the experimental procedure, but to qualify, he must die before the cancer spreads too far. He makes the heartbreaking decision to end his life prematurely to preserve his chance at being revived. Naomi is devastated. She came to be with him through the end and can't bear to lose him even a moment sooner. Still, Mark goes through with it. He dies, voluntarily, hoping to one day return. The year is 2084. 70 years later, Miracle Health successfully revives Mark. Doctors and assistants surround him, monitoring his vitals and ensuring his condition is stable. Weak and disoriented, Mark loses consciousness. Some time later, he wakes up and sees his reflection for the first time. He feels terrible, overwhelmed by weakness and a splitting headache. Dr. West, one of the lead physicians, sits down with him for a conversation. He gently asks if Mark remembers anything from his previous life. Mark manages to recall some fragments from 2015, but the memories are hazy, not as clear as they would like them to be. A little later, Mark is told he's the first person ever to be brought back to life. His body is an incredibly complex biological system. Only about 20% of his original organs remain. The rest is made up of 65% cloned muscles and tissues, 10% bionic implants, and another 5% technical devices embedded in his body to monitor his vital functions. One such device is located on his abdomen and includes an external interface where a cable can be connected. Through this, scientists collect real-time data on Mark's health and condition to provide immediate medical support when needed. After Mark's resurrection, doctors and scientists are met with unexpected challenges. His body is extremely weak, he can barely move or speak and requires constant care. He's under 24/7 medical supervision and takes dozens of pills daily, including painkillers and other medications to keep him alive. Despite everything, Mark pushes through. Not long after, he manages to take his first steps. Though he still can't walk on his own, he's never alone. His personal assistant, Elizabeth, is always by his side, fully dedicated to helping him in every possible way. A few days later, Dr. West and Dr. Sarah begin working on enhancing Mark's physical capabilities. He practices fine motor skills and performs basic exercises, though every movement brings pain that will gradually fade over time. As he begins to recover, Mark starts asking questions. He's especially curious about how humanity has changed over the past 70 years. He had imagined a future filled with flying cars, space programs, and people colonizing other planets. But that turned out to be little more than science fiction. Humanity, it seems, hasn't changed much, just a few small things here and there. One of the biggest shifts is in how people view love and relationships. Most no longer seek a lifelong partner or build traditional families. Instead, they value freedom, open relationships, and personal space. Soon, Mark is introduced to a device called the Namascribe, a futuristic headset that allows users to view and record their memories as if saving files onto a flash drive. During his first interaction with the Namascribe, Mark is overwhelmed. A brutal headache hits him as a torrent of memories floods his mind like an avalanche. Determined not to lose touch with his past, he begins using the Namascribe regularly, learning to control it, and his memories. Through it, he sees flashes of his childhood, old friends, past lovers, and family. Mentally, he returns to the moments when he was truly happy. The next morning, Elizabeth is caring for Mark and answering his growing list of questions. Though she appears to be a young woman, she reveals that she's actually 46. She has no family or children, having embraced modern views on relationships. Elizabeth is open to being intimate with Mark and is willing to do whatever it takes to keep him from feeling lonely, but first, he needs to get stronger physically. That night, Mark struggles to fall asleep. Restless, he gets out of bed to take a short walk. Using a support device to move around, he finds himself in front of a mirror, but instead of seeing a youthful body, he sees a horrifying old man staring back at him. He knows it's just in his head. After all, he's technically over 100 years old. Startled, he collapses and can't get back up on his own. As his body sends out a critical alert, he drags himself to the connection port and plugs in, hoping to relieve the pain and send emergency data to the monitoring team. With each passing moment, Mark sinks deeper into his memories, overwhelmed by how drastically his life has changed. It all feels like a different reality, like the images in his mind are illusions, but it's a world he desperately wants to return to. He remembers the first girl who ever took care of him, his early attempts at starting a business, and the loved ones who supported him through it all. Soon, the medical team holds an emergency meeting. One area of Mark's brain is starting to fail under the strain. For reasons they don't yet understand, his brain is malfunctioning, putting him at risk of losing all his memories. Mark begs everyone to leave the room so he can speak with Dr. West alone. In a quiet, heartfelt moment, the doctor admits that Mark may never live a normal life. His body is simply too weak to function on its own. On top of that, the public is growing increasingly hostile toward the private corporation behind his resurrection. People are uncomfortable with the idea of bringing the dead back or cloning human tissue. Protests against miracle health are becoming more frequent. Mark is devastated. It means he'll have to remain in the clinic, constantly monitored, with no real hope of building a life for himself. Time passes, and the doctors gather to celebrate a milestone. It's been 100 days since Mark was given his second chance at life. No one is more excited than Elizabeth, who by now has become not just his assistant, but also his lover. To mark the occasion, Dr. West returns a box of Mark's personal belongings. Inside, he finds his old journal, dried flowers from girls who once cared for him, a ball he used to play with as a kid, and photos of his early inventions. Among the items is something unfamiliar, a letter he's never seen before. It turns out to be from Naomi, the woman he loved before he died. As Mark reads the letter, memories of Naomi come flooding back. Their love feels like it belonged to another lifetime, yet it was timeless, beyond rules, beyond reason. They first met in college as teenagers and endured countless obstacles to be together. Naomi had been in a relationship with someone else, which meant Mark had to endure her constant disappearances and secret meetings. Sometimes they saw each other rarely, sometimes not for years. When Naomi grew tired of their complicated relationship, she would drift, sometimes sleeping with strangers. But no matter what happened, their love always found a way to survive. Just when it seemed they might finally have a chance at happiness, Mark was hit with the devastating news. He was sick, and he only had a year to live. Right now, Mark is overwhelmed by memories, but he still wants to read Naomi's letter from the year 2033. In it, she reveals that, at 50 years old, she finally realized she had loved only him her entire life. After losing her friends, family, and the partner she'd been with for years, Naomi decided to undergo a similar experiment. She froze herself in a cryochamber, hoping to be revived 50 years later so she could be with Mark. When Mark learns this, he turns to Dr. West, asking about Naomi and how soon she might be brought back. Dr. West explains that human resurrection is an incredibly complex, time-consuming, and, most importantly, extremely expensive process. Investors had funded Mark's revival because they were interested in his case. But successful resurrections are only possible for people who are strong and relatively healthy. Mark died just in time, before his illness had severely damaged his internal organs. Naomi, on the other hand, lived until 50 and developed chronic illnesses, making her revival not only dangerous but very unlikely to succeed. Realizing that the woman he loves will probably never come back, Mark falls into depression. He spends hours looking at old photos, remembering the time they shared. Back when she found out about Mark's illness and his decision to join a private cryo experiment, Naomi was furious. She didn't want him giving up on life early or risking everything in a corporate trial. That fight drove her to pack her things and leave, saying she was going back to her ex. The memory still hurts. Trying to let go of his old life, Mark asks Elizabeth to shave his head. Some time passes, and Mark starts asking questions again. He hasn't fully given up hope that Naomi could be revived. He just wants to understand why the doctors don't share his optimism. He suspects they've conducted similar experiments in the past, which might be why they're so quick to dismiss the idea. But Elizabeth doesn't know anything. She's new at the clinic and signed a non-disclosure agreement, so she can't be fully honest with him. Days, weeks, and months pass. The doctors begin to notice that Mark's condition is deteriorating. Instead of improving, he's declining. His depression is taking a toll on both his body and mind. He looks vacant, wandering through the facility with no purpose. Worst of all, his memories are beginning to fade due to neurological issues, and there's nothing the doctors can do to stop it. Elizabeth suspects Dr. West and his assistant know more than they're saying and begs them to help Mark, but they just shrug, helpless. That evening, Elizabeth, now in love with Mark, tries to comfort him. She gives him a sedative and dims the lights so they can be intimate. Technically, he's not yet cleared for physical exertion, but she doesn't care. She hopes being close to her might distract him from Naomi, but quickly realizes she was wrong. Even in this moment, Mark is still comparing her to the woman he lost, unable to let go of the past. Later that night, Mark sneaks into Dr. West's office and steals memory cards containing his stored recollections. When he watches them, he uncovers a horrifying truth the private company has been hiding. The scientists had tried to resurrect hundreds of people, and every attempt had ended in failure. Not a single patient survived. Those who were brought back briefly experienced nothing but terror, pain, and suffering before dying again. Some time later, Dr. West gathers investors and patrons to present the clinic's achievements. He promises a great future for medicine and their Project Lazarus, claiming that Mark's successful resurrection is just the first step toward something monumental. Dr. West urges them not to spare any expenses for further research and development, but he needs to prove the project's effectiveness. He presents Mark to the public, causing shock and applause. Afterward, Dr. West makes a shocking announcement, claiming he wants to launch a new project, one that would not only give life back, but also love. He promises to resurrect Naomi soon, but Mark realizes that this is nothing more than a lie and populism to gather more money. The attempt to resurrect a sick 50-year-old woman is bound to fail. A little later, Dr. West visits Mark to discuss what's happening and what he's seen. He knows that Mark has watched the recordings but insists that he suffers from every failure and lost life. Mark doesn't believe the fanatic's words, convinced that for Dr. West, this is just business. There's no place for human emotions or feelings. The misunderstanding between the doctor and patient grows, as they have completely different views on life. However, Mark is forced to admit that he can't live without this project and the private corporation, which leads him to accept his fate. Continuing to use the memory recorder to revisit his memories, Mark is transported back to the day he threw a farewell party for his family and friends. The most touching moment for him was when Naomi came to reconcile. She accepted his decision and promised to stay by his side until his last breath. During the party, Mark gave most of his belongings to friends and loved ones, leaving only Naomi and her love for him. Now, Mark understands that life is merely a form of material existence. Without emotions, feelings, and experiences, life has no meaning. It's empty. People and the connections with them give life purpose, and feelings and cherished memories are more valuable than life itself. Fully immersed in the past, Mark goes to the cryo chamber where Naomi's body is stored. It's here that Elizabeth finds him, confessing her love for him. He can't reciprocate, still loving Naomi and wishing to be with her, but he knows that's impossible. Mark admits that the last months of his previous life were the happiest he'd ever had, surrounded by family and friends, living life to the fullest and experiencing the full range of emotions. Now, this isn't life, but a miserable existence without feelings, plans, or exciting events. Realizing he doesn't want to continue living such a dreadful life, Mark asks for a drug to end his suffering. Elizabeth is shocked, torn between loving him and understanding how deeply he's struggling. A few days later, Mark uses the memory recorder to preserve all his memories. After recording most of his past onto a hard drive, he meets Elizabeth and learns the name of the drug used for ending life. He finds the very drug in the medicine cabinet and remembers what happened just before his first death. Naomi had been with him every minute, buying the medical drug that allowed him to end his life. She stayed by his side, waiting for his death, and then notified the clinic so they could save and freeze his body. Realizing that he had lived a happy life that doesn't need continuation, Mark drinks the poison and goes to Naomi's cryo chamber. He deliberately opens it so that they both will be doomed to die together and says goodbye to his beloved. It seems like the end, but the doctors oppose it. They use the saved data and Mark's body to resurrect him once again, against his will, because he is the result of an experiment with no right to choose or voice. At the same time, it becomes clear that even the previous version of Mark was just another copy, as Dr. West has resurrected him dozens, if not hundreds, of times. Can technology truly bring the soul back, or does it only revive the body? If emotions, empathy, passion, and fear are shaped by our experiences, can someone still be considered human without their emotional history? Share your thoughts in the comments down below, give us a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.